I hope it's okay I'm wearing my hat today because you don't want to see what's under my head.
I thought there's nothing under there.
Not today. There isn't. There is something.
Oh, okay. Can we do an end of podcast reveal?
No.
Oh. Anyways, we'll begin on that note. Hello, guys. Welcome back.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to the podcast. I'm your host, Nick. This is the other person across from me, Sean, who's, sometimes a host.
Yes.
No, I'm kidding. I don't know.
Nice, Nick.
Anytime.
Great. So we got a spicy topic for you today.
Yep.
We're going to talk about the most influential concept artists.
But it's not like an exhaustive list. Just to be like fully transparent, there's not an order to these people. This is like a list of 10, I think we chose, correct?
We're just going to kind of, I think I liked your idea. We'll kind of run through who we think are the most influential, and we'll start from, let's say, the 80s or 70s, go back in time, and then we'll work our way to the future.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So yeah, we can, this list is in no way like a ranking from 10 to 1. It's mainly people we think are noteworthy and people who are cool to, if you guys want to check out, if you guys want to learn more about.
Like we could easily make like another 3 of these episodes on influential people because there's just been like so many in the industry.
Oh, yeah.
There's so many people to talk about. So I don't want anybody to be like, oh, we picked this person, but not that. Like, no, it's, it's an episode. We wanted to pick 10 to make it a nice round number, and we'll do more.
10 and plus whoever we wanted to. We'll keep it nice and,
fluffy.
Fluffy. We'll fluff the corners.
Exactly.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it's going to be nice and fluffy.
So yeah, I guess we can go back. Well, we'll go back into the like the 70s, I think, the 60s. Okay. And I have some people that I think are quite influential. And I'd like to preface it with what is influential, like what would make a concept artist influential.
We talked about this for a while. We still didn't really come to like a conclusion.
Yeah, I think it's different for everyone. Some people may think it's let's say the influence they have on the culture. Some people may think it's the educational aspect, like how much are they educating people. But I think there's a few things.
But actually, that actually might be an interesting thing. So like to hear from people watching would be, because we were discussing this, and it's something that we discussed like I think like 3-4 times.
Yeah, we were hard to
it was hard for us to figure out. And it's like, what does influential mean to us? Are we picking influential in general? How does that affect? Because some people are influential in the educational space.
Yeah.
Some it's pipelines they created. And some it's not really a pipeline. It's just their art was just so influential that people wanted to kind of mimic that. And so there's all these like different artists that influenced in different kind of ways. And it's like, how do you kind of pick and choose? It's hard. There's so many of them. And so like, if there's something specific you guys would like to see, maybe influential in an educational sense, influential in, workflow defining kind of sense in the work industry. Like if there's something you'd like to see more specific, like please let us know. And then
we're just going to go for pretty,
like all encompassing. Yeah.
Yeah. And then we can always, make good idea, like make a more focused topics. Yeah, I guess I'll start. Like, I think in general, for me, how I view influential is, it's usually like you have to kind of like weigh a bunch of different parameters, and I like to just see, okay, how much impact, for lack of a better word, how much impact did that concept artist make on basically others? Yeah. So for me, I think it encompasses number one, which is I think the most basic, is like how much visual impact did they make towards, let's say, how we make art or how people perceive art. And there's some artists who really changed the game. Like they changed the way people think about what looks good. And we'll talk about a few that we think have done that. But so that's really one I would say. And then what else would you think would be a topic?
I think that actually just hits the nail on the head for me. Like influential, it's hard to be specific, but in general, it's somebody who made like a huge impact. And I'm going to have some specific ones that made a huge impact for me. Because, there's influential as a whole, like in a more objective way, like what influenced the industry. And then there's what influenced you, because people that were really influential to us won't always be the people that were the most influential as a whole. So I guess it's things that just have like a huge impact on.
What topics though? Like, because I mentioned like
topics.
Yeah, relate. So I can say them if you want. Like another one is education. Like
education is a big one. Process.
So it's like certain artists will introduce a new way to do art. Yeah. So, and I think learning is a big one, because there's some artists who through their let's say their dedication to making it easier for other artists to learn,
Yeah.
they, I would say, have made a huge impact. Just that alone, like that alone is such a good thing to mention.
Yeah.
There's also one more though I want to mention, and that's there's some people that actually make a community. They actually bring the concept artists together, and they make more of a like a they bring.
Wouldn't that be under education though?
Sorry,
wouldn't that be? Because I'm assuming you're referring to Level Up.
It's yeah, exactly. It's like,
but that's more education. It was a place for people to learn and give each other feedback. So I would go under.
But I think it's still worth mentioning, like the community aspect, like making a space for artists to like gather. Yeah. So yeah, that could be like some of the ways that we can. I think I'll add one more. I think, and there's some artists that are literally just incredibly inspirational for the time that they are doing art. So I think, let's say we go back in time, obviously, like there's like the John Singer Sargents or the Alphonse Mukas that are just so good at what they do that they are in a way influencing everyone around them. So
so I think Craig Mullins would be an example of that, or Jaime Jones as another example of that. Like people that, and even like in more recent times that are really popular, like there was a time where like, you had people like on ArtStation, like Navan Chantara, like he's not on our list, but he would be somebody that people like looked at his stuff as very unique, and then people were like, oh, I wanted to do that. So yeah, people like that where their stuff just kind of stands out. Spart's another one, and like like there's
let's
a bunch
get
of
to them, brother.
Yeah, let's get
all right,
to
let's
them,
get to them. So let's start from the let's go back in time.
Back in time, before I was born,
and me.
Wait, you're not that old? Damn.
No, I'm actually young apparently. So
oh damn, insane. Yeah, because 70s and 80s, youngling. We're both not born here, so
let's start with so I think this is one of those classic artists that sort of, it feels like they started the concept artist role. Like this artist was one of those artists, like before this artist existed, concept artist wasn't really a thing.
Yeah.
And so this artist's name is Ralph Mcquarrie. And so I'm pretty sure many of you know, but Ralph Mcquarrie was an artist and probably one of the most famous artists for Star Wars. So Ralph Mcquarrie was responsible for, designing Darth Vader, Chewbacca, R2-D2, a lot of these basically like timeless now designs that everyone recognizes and everyone can be like, oh shit, like we know that. Like it's so popular. And I would say Ralph Mcquarrie kind of inspired probably a generation of artists through being, I guess, the that person that was able to do that and make a living out of it as well. So
I mean, it still has an effect today into like the industry. I mean, the amount of times I've heard like either like on a project or like a teacher talk about it where it's like you want to avoid just doing the straight up primitive shape for like a spaceship, or like, because that's like something that Star Wars kind of did, like the idea of just a flying triangle and an in space sphere. That's like that's like they kind of just took that. If you try to do that, it's going to feel very Star Wars, because Star Wars' art style is very primitive oriented in their shape language, and they don't stray away from that. So you tend to get into Star Wars territory when you start doing that from a stylistic choice.
Yeah, it's kind of cool because like it almost has this charm to it because they built them. Like they actually had to build like the maquettes, I guess.
Yeah.
And they filmed them and they use older techniques to make it believable, to make it feel like it was real. So it's weird how like that style that was just an adaptation for the time, because they need to make it look real somehow. It actually became a visual style. Like now they make it look like that because it looks like Star Wars rather than like it's not a technical issue anymore.
Yeah.
So it's kind of cool.
And honestly, it's a really cool style. I mean, like you look at some of the more recent stuff, I'm not going to get into if the story is good or not. I know some people don't like some of the newer Star Wars stuff, but just from like a design standpoint, because now it's different artists that are working on it. Like you have Mandalorian that Jama, who's also on our list, like is working on. And you still see that kind of primitive shape, kind of language that makes Star Wars what it is. Like all the buildings, again, very like they're designed, they look really, really cool, but they have very iconic shapes and very simple shape, and that's what makes them stand out so much. And that's
playful. I found there's like a playfulness to it. There's nothing that's too serious, and the detailing is almost like overly simple because it reflects like the way that they would make the miniature almost.
100%. And you see it still in the new shows. I personally, like I growing up, I was never a Star Wars fan. Like, I know that's a sin for like some people. Like, that's horrendous. Like, oh my God, I wasn't a big Star Wars
Dare you.
fan. I personally didn't grow up on Star Wars, right? But I have recently been watching, not right now. I finished it, but I watched all of The Mandalorian. I watched Andor. And like, for me, The Mandalorian was kind of an entry point for myself. I didn't watch like the new trilogy. But like Mandalorian, I watched, I loved it, and that really got me a lot more into Star Wars, to the point that I actually, like with my friends, started going back watching Star Wars from the start with the prequel trilogy, all that kind of stuff. And it's really interesting to see what it was back then versus how I got into it now with Andor and Mandalorian.
Yeah, it's kind of
It's
cool
really
having
cool.
that perspective. Like,
Yeah.
if you never saw it's like weird. Like, I grew up with obviously the 4, 5, and 6,
Yeah.
the originals, and I was introduced to them like I guess linearly or whatever.
Yeah.
But it's interesting if someone never saw the originals, like what they would think. So
Yeah.
it's kind of cool. Yeah.
Yeah, and for the longest, actually, there was kind of a funny story related to Star Wars, but essentially, like, for the longest time when I saw Star Wars, because I was so not a fan, I watched them when I was like, I was like 5. My dad showed them to me, and essentially, I was trying to remember. I was like, I had like little memories and flashes of Star Wars, and then I started explaining the moments to my friend. He's like, "Oh, you didn't watch the original trilogy?" I was like, "I didn't." He's like, "No, you watched the prequels." And I was like, huh, this whole
Nick,
time
how dare you?
I thought like I watched
Misinterpreting the originals for their
dude,
prequels.
I was going off memories
I
of
am
when
angry.
I was going
How
off
dare
memories
you?
of when I was 5, and I was like, oh yeah, there was a fight with like Darth Maul. I remember Jar Jar was in it, and he's like, yeah, you didn't watch the original trilogy, you watched the prequel. I was like,
it's like when you're
like,
trying to be cool, but like everyone's like, no, you didn't say that.
to be fair, I always preface that I'm not a Star Wars fan when I say this stuff. Like, I didn't really grow up on it. But yeah, like, and so now I went back, I've rewatched the prequels, and I've started the original trilogy with my buddy, and it's what an interesting thing to see now, because special effects, everything is just so different. It's like just being transported back, like in time, to how the highest of level of things was done back then, which is really cool. It's really cool to see.
No, it's awesome. Yeah. It's crazy, like the development of the IP. It's changed so much. Yeah, man. So yeah, so let's go to the next one.
Is there anything else you want to say about Ralph?
No, just say like he was just like, it's just cool to go back to the beginning of the role, like the beginning of what a concept art it was. And
it wasn't digital at that time either,
no, he was
right?
like sketching it out, which is crazy.
It's not something that we really know. There's some artists that still sketch, but it's not something that I personally haven't worked with an artist that still uses traditional medium.
At least not as the final. It's usually like something you can do on your own.
Yes.
But you never really show that. You'd always use that like just to make your ideas. But then you'd finish it in some digital format.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So it's really crazy how I switched from that. And to imagine doing this job like he did traditionally. Like,
wait till we talk about the next guy.
Okay.
Let's get to the next guy. I think this is going to be a good one.
Okay.
So the next artist, I think that, and I think this is one of the top 3 most influential concept artists, in my opinion.
And this is one of the weird ones that I don't know that well, and I probably should, considering what I specialize.
Yeah. So we'll reveal the name and we'll say why. So the next one is Syd Mead.
Yeah.
Syd Mead is, I would say, the most iconic science fiction, one of the most iconic science fiction artists to have lived, I would say, personally.
And I mostly do science fiction and hard surface stuff. And I actually don't know a lot about Syd Mead. And to just, I guess out myself, Syd Mead wasn't personally an influence of mine. Yeah. My influences going into art was a lot of very modern artists on ArtStation and things like that. I was one of the culprits that looked at ArtStation all the time when I probably shouldn't have.
Scoff.
And now I'm getting into more, now I'm getting influenced with more older artists and learning a lot more stuff thanks to awesome people that are showing me that. So So Syd Mead.
Syd Mead, it's great looking at his work. It's like a going back in time almost, and seeing an aesthetic, and even the way that the medium expresses itself, it's just so cool to look at. Mm-hmm. But a bit more about Syd Mead, just to give an overview, is that Syd Mead is one of those rocks. He was like considered a rock star for being a designer. So he would design, some of the famous movies like Blade Runner, Alien. He's responsible for Tron, a lot of the designs on Tron. I would say probably all of them. I don't know. Maybe someone can correct me on that. But he's also, and this is what's really important, is that he had such an impact on industrial design, like a lot on how like we would style cars and how we would think about vehicles and stuff like that.
Yeah.
I feel like the Syd Mead look or that era of sci-fi really impacted, let's say, how those how like you look at the cars from like the 60s, the 70s, and then as soon as you get to like the 80s, they become like boxes pretty
Yeah.
much. So it's like I think like how like this is why Syd Mead is so influential. It's like he had an impact to literally change industries.
Yeah.
How they design.
And it's somebody that now to this day, like I hear, it's just something, again, I didn't look at a lot, but I knew the name. Like I knew the name. I hear people talk about Syd Mead a lot.
Yeah.
And I've seen like a few picture of his, and whenever I saw them, they were really, really cool. But yeah, it's somebody that people tend to just know by name. Even somebody like me who didn't look at him,
It's a household name.
knew the name. Like I
Yeah.
knew Syd Mead. Like it goes that far. Like it's kind of crazy how much that name can spread out.
Yeah, exactly.
So yeah, really, really.
Yeah,
cool
really
stuff.
influential. Honestly, I think he passed away not too long ago. I don't remember the year, but it wasn't too long ago. But it's crazy, like how long ago he was designing. Like this guy's been around forever, and this is also an artist, who, because we're mentioning traditional, was doing all of his work with like gouache and like line art and stuff like that, and like was able to do these finished, and like for what we do, like we'll work on an environment painting that's very finished, but he would be able to do like these very complex science fiction renderings, and he would do it all in gouache. So it's really, really cool to know that, like, that at the time, that's what people were expected to do. Like, we didn't have Photoshop. We didn't have those tools that make it so easy, and you can do like an undo, and you can do a bunch of different versions, all that kind of stuff. No, he had to be so reliable and skilled that he had to basically able to do a gouache painting. Like gouache is not particularly forgiving, but he was able to do it.
And it also his colors, like one thing I do love from the pieces I've seen is like his colors are awesome. His color choices, it's really interesting. It's very vibrant. He doesn't kind of like shy away from that, which is something that I personally really like. But also to answer your thing from before, he passed away in 2019.
2019, not too long ago.
Not too long ago.
Yep. He's a legend.
Yeah.
Let's talk about another legend who I think studied with him, or I think painted on one of his projects, because I remember listening to, I think, a podcast with him. So someone who came after him, maybe probably was really bigly influenced. And this is, I think, one of the names that we said already and everyone kind of knows.
Yeah.
That would be Craig Mullins.
Yeah. This is now starting to get into names that I know a little bit more, that I've had a little bit of influence. The next one's had more influence, but I'm starting to know these a little bit more.
Nice.
In my art journey.
Yeah. So Craig Mullins, like, how does Craig Mullins influence you?
I mean, I don't think you could say concept art without somebody near you yelling Craig Mullins. Like, I don't think it was actually possible. Like, you would start working and a conversation about concept art would happen, and there was just at least one person who was like, have you seen how crazy Craig Mullins stuff was? Like, I don't think you could go a conversation without that name being dropped. It was him and Jaime Jones were like the two big names I think I heard all the time coming from people. It just was because he was so good. Like, you look at his stuff for Destiny, like it's so nice. Like, it's so good.
Like Jaime Jones?
Jaime Jones did Destiny, not Craig Mullins.
Not
Craig Mullins did Halo.
Yes.
My bad.
We'll get
Craig
to Jaime later.
We'll get to Jaime later. To me, they're talked in the same sentence, but I think Jaime learned from Craig.
Yes.
Correct? Okay. Yeah.
I think so. That's why. He was heavily involved, like back in the forum they were on or something.
Okay.
Concept.org. Was it concept.art?
.org. Yeah, concept.org is where they were on. So, my bad. Craig Mullins, Halo, Jaime Jones, Destiny. But yeah, like their stuff is nuts. Like, and it's also a big influence. If I'm not mistaken, Craig Mullins had a really, really big influence on the painterly look in digital, because he not only is he
100%.
Not only is he the grandfather of like digital art, is what he's kind of been coined and named as. It's what people kind of look at for how like translating the traditional medium and somehow still successfully doing it in a work way for like not necessarily production, but at least like in a work way used for concept art. Like it's really interesting, right? And that's usually the benchmark that people look at. Like him and Jaime Jones, like two of the big ones.
Yeah, I think if we, let's say, rewind back, let's say to late 90s or the 2000s specifically, like a lot of the stuff that Craig was doing, Jaime came a bit after, but a lot of stuff Craig was doing, it was ahead of its time. Like he was able to basically achieve these really, I would say, oil painting or traditionally inspired results,
Yeah.
but to like a masterful level, like to a level that many people really were just like, oh, like how does he do it? Like how is he able to like basically capture the effects of light and all these masterful compositions and just have all these variety of subject matter that he would just be able to, I would say, illustrate in such a amazing way. And so for me, he was the type of artist who, you know, was always looking to the past for solutions and ways of doing things and making it modern again. So I think, yeah, Craig Mullins definitely started that, I would say. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe there's others who are part of that. But the one I remember, the one I would think that did that would be Craig Mullins. He brought those oil painting, those traditional ways of doing things and making them modern, basically.
If I'm not mistaken, I could be wrong. Somebody correct me if I am, but I was actually looking up what game the piece was for, because it's a piece that I actually do know from him that I remember. And I think it was done for BioShock. It's that scene where you're like in a place.
I know
and
exactly what you're talking about. Yeah.
And it's just like so nice. It's
Well,
so
I show
good.
it here just so people can see it.
Yeah, we can pop it at the piece I'm talking about, but I'm pretty sure, that's the cover for BioShock. It was used for that game called Rapture, the area. But yeah, like again, that game is so iconic, and I mean that piece like just so iconic.
Yeah, he was
looking.
doing all these like, I remember the Age of Empires paintings, like just doing these insanely, just so juicy. I don't know what the word is, but they're just so technically masterful. And he was just doing all these like amazing illustrations for these big franchises. It's awesome.
I think it's one of those things like you look, and I think, you know, we can have another conversation, another video, but it's like, I think it's one of those artists that every time I start like getting all excited about these new tools and techniques and all this kind of stuff that remind me, it really doesn't matter how fancy and cool all these tools are. Nothing is going to replace your knowledge of fundamentals. Like your knowledge of fundamentals, like you just see it right there when you see Craig. Like his fundamentals are just so good. Like it doesn't matter if he does 3D. It doesn't matter if he did all these tools that ever came out. It would still look so good because whatever he does on top of it with his knowledge of fundamentals is going to make it so good. I can't make my stuff look as good as Craig Mullins. I don't have the level of rendering, the level of painting, the level of like some of these fundamentals where they're at that he has. No matter how much 3D, no matter how much Actfish cheating I decide to do, it's not going to be as good as Craig Mullins because you just can't replace good fundamentals. Yeah, I think it just kind of shows that
the bread and butter basically of what we do. Yeah, 100%. I guess a few more things about Craig. I thought it was really cool that he basically pioneered Photoshop. Like he was involved in like the first versions of Photoshop, and I think there was a point, and I've heard this on a podcast, probably many of them because he told this story many times, but like he was like painting with a mouse at the time because there wasn't any like pressure sensitivity for the tablet at the time. I don't remember the details, but I remember him painting like with a mouse and doing all these. I think he showed some images. He was doing like, you wouldn't even tell. It was as good, maybe you know, basically the same quality, and it just goes to show like how good he was at what he was doing. So he really is the godfather. He basically helped bring Photoshop to life, and that's what we use. Well, maybe some of us use different programs now, but
he's the godfather, but he doesn't put horses in people's beds. It's a reference to the Godfather.
I didn't see the Godfather, so I couldn't get that reference. No,
it's okay.
I have a feeling it was from.
I haven't seen the movie either. I just know the scene.
Okay.
I just know that there's a scene like that.
Yeah.
So
you got me on that one.
Thank God I clarified that because people would be like, "Why is he like putting horses in people's beds?" And like, God, like, okay,
yeah.
I'm happy
Craig Mullins, man, he's awesome. So maybe we can move to some more modern names.
Yes.
He is modern, but like I would say let's go more
modern.
So
the next one I think is Feng Zhu, right?
Yeah, let's talk about Feng Zhu.
So Feng Zhu I could talk a little bit more about.
Right.
Because he influenced me a little bit.
Nice.
I don't think, I mean, now we're starting to get to the point where like the artists that we're going to start naming, even though some of these other artists could have influenced us or people after us, these are the artists that were kind of like at certain points were either phasing out of the limelight as being the most influential and new techniques and new people were popping up and they started being very influential. Like these names affected us, I think, at a certain part, either early on or later on in our journey. And we were a part of it, whether we wanted to or not. Like we got influenced by it, right? Because it was there and it was very loud. And Feng Zhu is one of those. I think.
Oh yeah.
I think we were on the tail end of Feng Zhu, because when I
Not me.
started, you were, so
No.
I was later than you. So for
Yeah,
me,
you
it
were
was
later than me.
towards the tail end of Feng Zhu, because there's a point where you kind of stops posting after that. But for you, you were right kind
I
of
was in the thick of it.
in the
Like,
thick of it. Yeah.
yeah. So to give some context, there was a time when it was in the 2000s, I think, and the education for concept art or digital painting in general was like almost nothing. So this was when like YouTube was starting. This was when, basically the only thing I could find at the time was either buy a Nomon DVD or you watch Feng Zhu's videos. That's literally the only options I had at the time. This is probably like 2010-ish, 2009, probably around then when his videos started to come up. And why he was so influential is because he was so informative, and he took so much liberty in just basically explaining to the world what this job was about and how to actually do it at a time when there's nothing out there. There's like nothing out. You'd have to like hunt people down and ask them, or go on some forum or something like that. Like there's YouTube videos that I would like listen to on like specific subjects, and it was like the first time we're all hearing it basically. So we like look up either process videos, those are new at the time. He would talk about like how to get hired, what a concept artist does, all these very important things that I think a lot of us can find out really easy now because there's like a billion videos. But at the time, there was just him, and he was basically spearheading YouTube education.
And he was all about, if I'm not mistaken, correct me if I'm wrong, but all about speed painting, being efficient, being like, because you were doing this as a job, and he started to shine a lot more light onto like, it's not always about this pretty picture, painting something perfect. It's about giving solutions to your clients, solving
100%.
problems. And we got to see more of that, or at least you got to see more of that. I was on the tail end of it. So I got a lot of I got to pick and choose what videos I want. People would recommend me, this video by Feng Zhu really helped me in my journey. So I got like a lot of those sent to me. And especially at the time during like the Transformers movies, he was very big because he worked on those. And he was also a really big influence, because now at this point, when I'm in my education kind of like journey, Feng Zhu's not the only kind of, I guess, player in the game, if you will. There's like other people
like kind of,
there's Gumrows, there's a ton of thing. And so he was the go-to guy that people would like, if you want a more speed painting kind of look, like you looked at Feng Zhu. But also that his school is just so famous, like Feng Zhu School of Design. Like that was like, at least when I was looking for schools, you had Art Center and Feng Zhu were like two of the big ones that people would just name drop for concept art, because Brainstorm I think hadn't started or was very much in its infancy at the time. So they were the two really, really big ones. And you had stuff like Schoolism and other things like that. But
these ones are like those ones where like it's an actual 1 year to 2 year plus schooling. So you're getting like a full course meal basically. It isn't just like, 1 or 2 classes here and there, because that's what I did a lot of those things where you'd buy a class, you'd go for 8 weeks, you'd stop. But this is like, no, you're like heavily invested. It's like almost like a diploma pretty much.
Exactly. So he had one of those big schools. So again, like,
and still going, right?
I think it's still going. I think he just now started back to YouTube, but I think I'd have to double check. I think
should be still going, I think, unless it's not. But from what I remember, for the past 15 or so years, I've always heard, about it.
Because I think not the podcast, but his videos stopped because they were either changing locales or making renovations or something. I think there was a pause at some point for something, but
okay.
I don't know the specifics. So like, I could be wrong here, but I think but it should probably still be going. I would double check on their website, like their information's there. But like at the time you couldn't think about concept art and school without Feng Zhu being an option. Like that was one of the options you had. It was like, it made a huge influence. Like he was one of the go-to people to look at. And then you had, that. And then obviously you had Level Up, but we'll get to that. Yeah, later.
So I think we covered everything. So the next name, and this is where we can kind of, we can pitch names, because this is where it gets a little, like it depends on what you think is most influential, I would say. Like some people,
we had a lot of disagreements at this point.
Because they're all influential in their own way, and it's like ranking them seems a little weird. It's like, why not just
and there's just so many more names than this. That's what makes it so hard. Like, just to give you an example of a name that's not on here of what we mean by hard, it's like we talked a bit about hard surface and what was influential, and I think we said Vitaly Bulgarov, but we didn't put him in the list because we had so many people to talk about. But
Well,
like,
we mentioned him. I mean, since you mentioned him, I
yeah,
guess we'll talk about
but
it.
no, but just to give an example of like, there's so many artists that are influential, and like, you know, Vitaly is one of those.
Exactly.
Like for hard surface and 3D, like, you know,
Yeah.
you can't
Or
really go
Fausto De
there
Martini, all these
without
other
him.
artists too.
There's like so many people. I would argue that somebody like, you know, Alex Seneschal was very influential for me in hard surface, but you know, then other people would say Vitaly. Like there's so many names to throw out there for more specific
It gets very
stuff.
subjective at that
Yeah,
point.
it gets very hard. Like the list could go on for like a ton of
So
people.
we'll just say
Yeah.
some. I guess pick your most influential, and we'll keep talking.
Yeah.
I'll start. I think
let's go down your list because you have a good list of people we can talk about.
Go down we have a little list.
Yeah, let's continue the list because the next is Scott Robertson, right?
Yeah,
Which I think we can both talk about.
I want to mention Scott Robertson because, for the time he was in, he was providing such good perspective, basically like rock solid fundamentals for basically all the artists at the time. So for me, I think I can't not put in there because he was also a concept artist. He did industrial design. He was, you know, he's an incredible artist. Like honestly, I've seen the way he draws. I've learned perspective through him. I feel like everyone knows the books he made, basically like how to draw, how to render.
Those are gave us the books for the diploma program. Like I think they're still giving the books for the diploma program. I think as well for how to draw, how to render.
It's like, you know, I don't know. It's like what's an analogy? It's like, how can you do concept art without at least going through those books? It feels so integral to building your fundamentals.
Or at least knowing the books and have looked through them. Like, you know, I think people go through those books at different levels. Some people like study and do every single exercise. I was not one of those people.
Yeah.
But I didn't do how to render, but I did look through all of how to draw, and I did some of the exercises in how to draw. Like I think if I had perspective questions and I was doing something I was unsure, like my first instinct was to go to my how to draw book and look through it for like to answer that perspective question I had, because there isn't really a better, like, you know, for lack of a better word, Bible for perspective. If you want to know,
I would say it's probably the best book
how
ever made on
to figure out perspective in like the actual like figuring it out, and like it's probably the most complicated method because at the time there was no 3D cheating you could do. If you want to figure out how to actually do perspective by hand, like there isn't really a better book that tells you like everything about perspective than how to draw. Like it just is.
Yeah, it's crazy. I think also worth mentioning is he's really involved in just making more educational content for artists. I think he owns, I'm pretty sure I'll just say he owns I think it's Design Studio Press, where they have all these educational books for artists and for all these basically entertainment design related stuff. Could be getting it wrong, but I think he's doing a lot for the community. And
he also would teach at Art Center, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, I don't know if he still does, but I think he was one of the core teachers at ArtStation. Yeah. So probably one of the most influential artists that really gave a lot of his knowledge to basically what we know today as like perspective fundamentals.
Yeah. So. Yeah. And I think it's too bad too, because a lot of that stuff, like a lot of people are not doing perspective as we get further along, because 3D has now become so prevalent that you can get away with your perspective not being as good anymore, because 3D can do a lot of the heavy lifting in perspective. But like, I think it's still unfortunate because, again, like it's just going to make you better if you learn the fundamentals, and the book's right there, like on the table. Like, there's no real better way to get your perspective knowledge. Like just going through it once, you don't have to do every extra, but at least like read through it and understand a little bit of the theory behind, you know, figuring out the perspective yourself. Like you're going to help yourself. It's going to pay you back as far as your skills. You're going to understand how to break perspective to make something more impactful, more dynamic. You're going to understand how to, you won't be limited. You won't be forced to work in 3D, and then you have to model everything because you can't draw certain things in 2D. Like you'll be able to freely jump between both programs, paint and draw what you need to do on top of the 3D. And you never feel like you're like limited or held back in any way by your skills. So it's worth doing regardless of how many tools still come out to this day, I would say.
Yeah, definitely. I feel like we're in an age where, there's a lot of people who are just working in 3D specifically. And I think that if you are interested in having some more I guess two-dimensional, just at least a basis in how perspective works, I think it will only make you a stronger artist. So
Yep. Yeah.
definitely check that out.
Same. We're gonna have that same point, but towards rendering when we get into the photo bash topic.
Oh, photo
Because
bashing.
that's kind of the same problem that arises with photo bashing that
Yep.
3D brings to perspective. So
Yep.
when we get to there, you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah, for sure. So the next name is another, I would say today, hugely influential.
It's one you're gonna have to talk about. This is actually one I don't know much about.
So this is a concept artist called Bobby Chiu, and Bobby Chiu is, I think he did a lot of animation work, a lot of character design, creature design.
A bit of his work. I've seen it, but
yeah. But I would say, like, man, when it comes to community and education, this artist is groundbreaking. Like, this artist has created so much positivity for concept artists, illustrators, like any digital artist, basically. So yeah, I guess everyone's familiar, or if you are not familiar, he created Schoolism, which is, I think, one of a kind. Like, at the time when it was created, I don't think there was any other website like it that was offering that type of content, or the way you could basically learn for an affordable price. Yeah, so
which is a big school still to this day. Like,
sorry?
It's a big school still.
Oh
to this day.
yeah, it's still going. And what's more impressive is that Bobby Chiu's still involved. He's still, making even more impact, giving more to the community. And I think, if I don't know if you want to go eventually, but I went to Lightbox maybe 3 years ago.
Stop trying to get me to leave the country.
You have to leave your home, Nick.
No, I don't want to leave. I don't want to leave Canada. I'm happy in Canada.
Yeah.
Stop making me leave. But yeah, he created Lightbox, right? Like, Fred was telling us about that because I actually didn't know anything about Bobby Chiu. So yeah, that's actually really cool. And Lightbox is such a big event. Like, it's like the event for concept art.
Yeah.
Yeah,
exactly. Yeah, there's a lot of, when I went to Lightbox, it's great to have, because this is personal experience of mine, but when you're working and when you're trying to make a living, or you're trying to basically in the thick of being an artist, sometimes you can get a little, I don't know, you could be stuck in your ways. You can be a little stale, or you can be, I don't want to use the word jaded, because I don't believe I've ever been jaded, but I feel like when you go to an event like this, like Lightbox or any other event, you get rejuvenated. You get to experience why you really liked to be a concept artist in the first place. So I think,
what if you liked it to be away from people, and now you're forcing me to go towards people?
What? Well, I don't know, man. Maybe a virtual event for you, buddy.
There we go. Now you're talking my language.
Yeah, I think they might have done virtual Lightbox. It probably exists.
I think you can get virtual tickets for some of the talks. Yeah.
But yeah. But anyways, it's just to say that I personally become really, really inspired, and I feel like I find a new way to see art whenever I go to these events. And I just think that being in person with other artists really, I don't know, just makes you feel way more energized and excited about what's to come. So
that's awesome. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So you start the next one, because you know a lot about it.
This is the one I probably know the most about, and that was like right at like the biggest high of when I was learning. This was like the influence, which was kind of the Shaddy, Eytan, Robh, Ruppel, Maciej, one pixel brush, that kind of photo bash, high level photo bash kind of workflow. And like, if you were learning at that time, it's not really something you hear talked about as much now. And I actually, like, I've taught people, worked with people, and photo bash is not as big now. People actually don't know how to photo bash. Like, that I'm seeing is more common. But I don't think you could really get a job. It was harder to get a job, and you didn't really know people that didn't know how to photo bash. Like, it was
what time was this?
Thing.
Like, when do you think this happened? Because I remember it
was post, because I went.
It was like 2012 to like 2018, maybe, like that. Around that time is when this stuff was really hot, I find.
So I've been working for 6 years. So that'd be 2019, a little bit before that. Yeah. So around, like, for me, it was around 2016, 2017.
Okay. You see, that was at the height of it, I think, when people were like really getting.
They were doing talks So I'm talking about like the height of it. Like, photo bash was the way to work. You want to work on
Yeah.
Assassin's Creed, people photo bash. You want to work on Uncharted, people photo bash. Like
Yeah.
any game you wanted to work on that was somewhat realistic, people were photo bashing. Like photo bashing was like the way to work, and it became so popular. It was so fast. It allowed you to get a really high quality visual quality of work, a lot faster because of the photos. It was just, everybody worked like that, and everybody was like pushing that way of working to the point that photo bashing was the way to do characters for a little bit. Like it really, really affected the industry. Like it had
No kidding. Yeah. It was fast.
such a huge, it's so fast that it affected it.
And people are like, especially if you're working with people, especially like maybe non-artists who are just like, oh yeah, it looks done. Like there's something about photo bashing that really makes something look complete.
Yes.
And it was just a very, easy way to get a lot of information on a page.
Yeah, and it's how it worked for like 2 years at first. And on Call of Duty, like that's the way you worked. It was photo bashing. Like,
I remember you were on that.
Yeah, so it's like such a, I personally don't like working that way. I actually don't really photo bash anymore, but it was at the time everybody was looking at Eytan for like compositional stuff and shapes. And then it was like,
maybe I can get it a bit because I'd like to explain this. Yeah.
And then it's how you applied like photo bashing to like these shapes to kind of create something that was both juicy from the shapes you created and really high fidelity from the photos you brought in. And it was like this kind of mix of shape and photorealism together to create a heightened and more juicy version of real life in a way.
Yeah, they like figured out a way to make photo bashing looks really sexy, basically.
Yeah, it was,
which is really cool.
It's huge.
I'd love to speak about this because it was pretty much how I got in the industry. Like that's kind of the influence that pulled me in.
Mm-hmm.
So I obviously learned from Eytan, from Maciej, through tutorials and mentorships, etc. There was a point in time when the Naughty Dog artists, basically Naughty Dog concept artists who were responsible for like Uncharted, I think 3 and 4, I think some on 2. But that era of concept art was very groundbreaking, and this is where sometimes artists change the way people do things. So I would group these artists in basically giving artists a different way of seeing the world. They're giving the artists a way to see basically very, very sexy composition. Like almost like if you go back in time and you go back to like, let's say the Golden Age illustrators or the really, really really refined landscape painters like Edgar Payne and all those artists who are really good at composition. A lot of that wasn't actively a staple, let's say knowledge pool until I think one of the guys who really made it popular was Robh Ruppel, actually, where I think he worked with the artist Naughty Dog.
He was the art director, I think.
Exactly, yeah. And he was doing all these really, really amazing graphic compositions, and it kind of like trickled down, or they whoever learned at that time, they all learned it, and they redefined basically what concept art was expecting from its artists. So from what I remember, you had, these crazy juicy compositions, and then that mixed with, and this is another artist had a big influence, I would say he changed how photo bashing should look, and that would be Maciej Kuciara. Because Maciej Kuciara, and this is something I've heard a million times, I used to listen to a lot of his talks, and he's still one of my favorite artists to date. He was able to make photo bashing look really, really refined. And a lot of photo bashing before felt like a collage. It felt like the photos were kind of stitched together, and it's a little rough around the corners. You could feel the blending modes of Photoshop, like all this, what they call artifacts of a digital program. You can kind of feel them. But Maciej kind of brought,
which is almost a look now in and of its own. There's still people that work like that, but it's been kind of like, it's a style now. Like people have
it's a look.
People made it into like a style, and then it's its own thing.
Yeah, exactly. But it's just so, like, basically to continue the story, like Maciej on Last of Us was hitting a new benchmark, and the artists who were working with him, which was Eytan and Shaddy, I think at the time, they noticed it, and basically he spearheaded a new visual benchmark, which was, you said, like the 1 pixel brush look, where you combine the cinematic and almost like golden age, basically rock solid graphic composition fundamentals, all the composition stuff, and then you blend realism from photos, and you enhance it with the not enhance it, but you use the tools of 3D to even make it more how do I say it, like grand or tight, for lack of a better word. So they're using all these new tools mixed with maybe lost knowledge that wasn't as popular. So,
and I mean, this is the time that I actually got into concept art as well. Like the first tutorial I watched was Shaddy's like shape with the rock in the water.
Yeah,
like
we'll link that down below if you guys want to see it.
It's like I talked about it in my getting into concept art, like my journey, but like this is what got me into concept art. Listening to the talks that they were doing, him and Eytan, like this had a gigantic influence for the time that it was.
Everyone was like, I want to do that. Like everyone asked.
They even came to Syd's studio and did a talk. Like everybody was like, they were doing talks everywhere. Like it was insane how much of an impact it did. And it's kind of interesting because sorry.
Bless you.
Thank you. It's kind of interesting because, you know, the progress of tech is making like, it has a clear line, right? Like, so we went from traditional, which didn't leave much room for mistakes, right? You had to be very selective with what you did and knew what you wanted to do, to digital, which offered a lot more safety in terms of mistakes. You could undo all these kind of things. It was a natural evolution. And then it's like, okay, we want to get more realistic results instead of like rendering everything for so long. It's like, and then, you know, photo bashing, that next, it makes sense. Like, and then you get 3D and then now we got to a point where people literally are just rendering out scenes in 3D. There's even photo bashing is not even being used anymore because they could just make it look
3D is realistic, so powerful.
And then you get multiple angles all at once. Like the jump in tech is making sense. Like we're just trying to get that polish faster, more versatility, more like to save time. Like it's making sense where we're.
If you don't have to spend too much, like imagine having to, I mean, this is just the era, but like Syd Mead had to like draw the perspective lines.
Yeah.
He had to like plan everything out. Now you just grab a couple assets, build a scene in 3D, and you have a great base. Yeah. And you can even finish the job in 3D. So there's just so much more ease to create nowadays than it was in the past.
But what's interesting about the photo bashing topic, and I don't want to make this a topic about something else. One day we'll have a video on it. We just haven't been ready to talk about it, but photo bash was not accepted that easily. There actually was a lot of contention with photo bash, right? So like it had a lot of talk about it, just like we're having a lot of talk about a certain tool and thing that's happening right now.
The air is getting thin now.
Yeah, the air is getting thin. But I just want to kind of like remind, photo bash had a lot of those discussions. There was a lot of talk about the ethicalness of taking other photographers' photos, using them
or
as
just
you're
not a proper artist. It was like sort of
and you're not a proper artist.
Like you're not painting it from by hand.
Like, there's a lot of what's happening now, and I'm not saying that one is correct, one is like, I don't want to have an opinion. We're going to do an episode on this later when we're ready to talk about it because it's a very heavy one. But I just want to point out something kind of interesting and a little kind of like fun fact where the discourse around photo bash is very, very similar in some ways, not always, in some ways, to the discourse that's happening currently in this new kind of AI world at the moment.
We have preconceived ideas of what it means to, you know, be a digital artist, and that's always being challenged by these new technologies. It's just something that in a future video, like, we just have to talk about. Like, that's how we get through these things. We need to figure out, like, well, how do we rediscover maybe a new way to see this? Because it is hard when...
And it's an uncomfortable topic. I think I've been the one that's been against talking about it. I think you're more open to talking about it. I'm personally a little hesitant because it's... I don't really know how to talk about it, but
it's scary. People get really charged up about it.
Yeah.
It's normal because, like, it's super scary.
Yeah.
I empathize with people.
But I do want to say that photo bashing wasn't this easy thing that people's like, oh, we use photo bashing. The community was split. There were, like you said, people are like, you're not an artist if you use photos. Like the ethic, I mean, I think there's still an ethical question. Is it okay to steal photographers' art? Like at one point, are we saying that that's
you can buy
okay?
photo packs now?
That's starting to make it
like there's so many out there.
That started to make it a lot more ethical, right? You would buy photo packs, you had the rights for the image, people started taking their own photos, but you know, was it okay to just randomly take somebody else's photo off Google? Was it okay to go on Flickr and rip people's photo off using the little code option on Google Chrome? Like,
You're outing like a billion people right
I'm
now.
outing like a billion people. I know, it's
Like,
crazy.
I did that, yeah.
Like, is it okay just to screenshot the image because the website won't let you right click save as, right? Like, it's like, are all these things actually okay? Which are all things people do in the industry when they're photo bashing, like to be really transparent.
There is legal, like if everyone wants to know, there is a legal answer to this, where if you modify it to a certain degree, I'm not going to say the number because I don't want to be freaking yelled at.
Yeah.
But if you look up the rights, there is a percentage amount that you have to change the picture that you're using, and then legally it's not copyright. Please look it up yourself. I'm just giving you like a little glimpse of what I was told, but check it out. There is an actual legal.
That was something that I was told on COD for certain vehicles, like military stuff. Like that's a thing that needs to be changed. There needs to be X amount of changes, because technically military games, like any military games, not just Call of Duty, Battlefield, anything, like they don't have the rights to use the military vehicles in the game. So they need to do adjustments. So they're like that military vehicle, but they are not that military vehicle. I don't know if that applies to historical stuff. I think at a certain point, historical stuff is fair game, but to more modern
It'd be weird if
things,
someone like owned, I don't know, like galleons from like Greece or something.
Yeah. But I think for stuff like more up to date, like Humvees and things like that, like I think that's a different, more legal problem. So it's kind of interesting. Like it does have an effect into it. But I just wanted to talk about that because I feel like that's an important part in the history of this influence that marked a point in concept art that really created a divide. I think the only other time before that we had such a huge divide was when digital started happening, because people would say that digital artists weren't real artists compared to traditional, right? And so now we're having this repeat again. First it was digital. Second, it was photo bashing. And then I don't think 3D got really hit with it because you were creating your stuff yourself. But now it's happening again with AI. So again, all three of these things are not the same thing. They each pose their own problems, their own questions. There's very nuanced, but I'm just quickly generalizing, and we're kind of seeing something happen again that I thought was interesting to bring up, because it wasn't all rainbows and sunshine.
That was a specific time.
Yeah.
The thing that I didn't care about at the time, if I have to be blatantly honest, is that it looked so damn good that I was just like, dude, like, how can you not want it? Like, I was so sold on the beauty of it that I didn't have an issue with, you know, let's say the, you're not an artist thing. Like, that went out the window because they did such a good job.
Yeah.
Personally.
Yeah.
So, I guess a little minor note regarding, you know, these
I just want to say,
artists.
actually, some people, though, during the time of photo bashing, there was, because I remember it, if Craig Mullins got hit with it and a few others got hit with it, there was a point in time where people were looking through people's concept art photos and would like out them if they didn't cover their tracks on the photo bashing well enough. Like that happened more times than once, because that did happen. People were lazy, and then teachers would start to tell us, like, if you're going to photo bash, don't use the first 2 pages of Google, because everybody knows the pictures on the first 2 pages of Google. Like, transform the images you're painting on top of, because I remember there was a big thing around Craig Mullins that got posted during that time of, I don't know. Yeah, I think it was Craig Mullins. There was another artist that got, it was a big thing about photo bashing master painters' works, photo bashing that.
Yeah, I remember that instance.
And for some photos that weren't hidden enough, like that were too blatantly taken, people would get called out for it. So like we're reminiscing about this time, this huge influential part, but there wasn't without his dark ages involved in it. That was very interesting.
Yeah, there's always I guess fun drama fun drama when it comes to these kind of things, you know. It's just it just, I guess, is the way of the times.
It is fun times.
So you mentioned a lot of like technological advances. I think there's someone who's constantly innovating right now that we can talk about.
Oh, we're gonna skip the name in between. I guess
we'll go at our own pace. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, this one, a lot of you probably know. He's still making a lot of advancements in tools. To this day, it's Jama Jurabaev.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, I don't think you could do concept art without really being influenced by him, whether it's how you learned 3D code, whether it's how you learned his new way of doing Blender, whether it's how you learned his approach to VR,
Yeah.
whether it's some of the materials he made to make those clay looking models, like or his photo packs of like the nights he did with somebody else and those really
Yeah.
realistic. In some way, shape, or form, you probably got hit with some Jama stuff because
Yeah.
he makes a lot of content. He does a lot of talks, so you've probably maybe been to one of those. He has tutorial, like you've probably been hit with Jama stuff because right now he's probably doing some of the biggest influencing as far as new pipelines and workflows. Not to say he's the only one, but
it's crazy how much he's just advancing the tools that we use. Like how many more options we have to create stuff. Like he's always pioneering something new, which is so valuable, I think, to the community.
Yeah,
it's crazy.
It's really cool, and it's, you know, and we had an interesting kind of conversation. Remember we talked about like there's different kind of artists that kind of evolve, right? Everybody kind of learns art same kind of way ish. You learn art, and then you kind of have this split, and you have different kinds of artists. You have artists that end up becoming way more heavy into the tools, techniques, innovating, how you work. And then there's artists that don't care about that stuff, and they're more into like creating new styles, or pushing how far they can push their quality of their work. Not to say that Jama doesn't do quality work. His work is
it's
really
stellar.
gorgeous.
It's amazing.
But they focus on different things. Jama focuses on a lot of new ways to work, faster ways to work, like evolving his pipeline constantly. But then you can have somebody else, like it's like that's just about the vision, right? You get somebody like Raphael Lacoste wasn't really somebody who'd use all these crazy tools, but like it was always, he was an art director, and you could tell like his work was always about like creating this mood, this atmosphere. People chase different stuff at a certain point.
People just make, that's what we know them for. Like Sparth, for example, like everyone just remembers the look. It's just that look is so iconic.
Yeah, but like, he doesn't need any VR or things like that to do that look. Sparth is Sparth, right?
And also like he does have tools he offers as well. Like he has a different way of making his art, and I think he's definitely given that to the community as well. Like we all have benefited from like being more abstract, being more custom shape driven, all that kind of stuff. That if you look at his work, I think he used a lot of custom shapes.
He also did actually a really cool technique. This still blew me away to this day, but it's like, so what he uses is he uses jitter or like scatter with like the value with the brush, and then he'll paint on it, and then he'll magic wand select a specific value and paint in that shape. So he actually uses the jitter to create shapes that link together. Like it's actually really interesting the way he works. Like it's pretty cool. I was like, damn, okay, that's a different way to use the jitter, or like
it's like a happy accident sort of approach where you let like random things pull you in different directions, which is actually a lot of the artists I learned from when I was at Sin Studio. They used that. That was I think that was very popular around the late 2000s, early 2000s, like before photo bashing was like a huge thing. There was a lot of those abstraction processes that were really, really cool.
People have some really interesting, and like, and, you know, it's kind of unfortunate because custom shapes and stuff like that is not really something that's being used as much. It's not really the flavor that people are talking about, but these are ways that you can still work very efficiently. There's like that artist. I don't remember his names. Please, nobody get mad at me. I don't remember his name, but if you've seen his stuff, you know who I'm talking about. If I remember, I'll look for him in my likes in ArtStation, and then we'll post them. But essentially, he creates like a kit bash of 2D images. Like he paints all these things of a theme, and then he actually kit bashes environments with all the pieces he made in 2D in Photoshop.
Oh, wow.
Like it's really cool. I haven't seen really many people work that. I think I've seen 2 people ever that work like that. And it's like, what an interesting way to use the methodologies of 3D and kind of like this kit bashing workflow, but you just paint your own assets, and he would work very like orthographic or very straight on view to make it really easy to put anything he wanted in from this painted asset.
Yeah, it's like, if you know, this is like the cool thing about art. There's always an easier way to do things. There's always another way you can approach a subject matter. Yeah. And it's just great that we have access to all this stuff. It's amazing. Yeah.
And Jama's one of those people. He's always looking for like an easier, more interesting way. I mean, like the way he used 3D coat was a big one. That was probably one of his biggest impacts, was 3D coat, because so many people to this day were using it, right? Even people like Eytan, Shaddy in their workflow were then starting to show that the 3D coat stuff, Florent Lebrun as well with 3D coat, like,
because the one thing I noticed that the shift there was oh, I can be rough in 3D.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be
Yeah.
super technical. 3D code allowed you to be very, let's say, rough or rough around the corners. I think you described it like you're painting in 3D.
Yeah.
I think Jama was really emphasizing that quick and
Mhm.
easy workflow. And for a lot of concept artists, me included, like that's all we needed. That's
Yeah.
all the attention we need in 3D to get at least to a basis
Mhm.
in Photoshop, so then we can actually paint or do
Mhm.
photo bashing, etc. So it's a really great workflow.
And while we're on the topic of 3D code, just to kind of do a little segue, because that'd be such a fun episode to do. But like in general, like 3D code's always been known as a software that's very kind of messy, very like almost like you're painting, but in 3D. And people don't really associate 3D code with extremely polished and like clean models and like really high, like push detailed stuff. Like people don't usually they'll think of ZBrush and like other softwares for that kind of stuff. What's interesting is I know somebody, you know them as well, Pavel, and it'd be such a cool thing to talk about how softwares like a software can be known for something, but people who really master a software and like try to pull a software in a different direction, you can be very surprised by kind of like the results you can actually get out of it. Besides just learning what other people are doing, really take the time to learn a software and make it your own. I think, you know, our buddy Pavel is somebody that's done that. He took 3D Coat, which was known as this messy software,
Yeah.
and he does models that are more polished than some people do in like Fusion 360. Like, and it's really impressive that he took a software from that to that. So it's like, when you see a software being used like all these cool different ways, like also try and find your way to use the software, because there's always more things to discover, more things to learn,
Yeah.
more new workflows to figure out and share in a software than just what you've been seeing, which is
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah,
Definitely. Yeah. It's crazy.
yeah.
There's also another artist who kind of he was actually using a software no one was using at the time,
Hmm.
and we mentioned him before, but really briefly. But we'll talk about him briefly here. Vitaly Bulgarov, where
Yeah.
I remember, and
What software was he
one of
using?
those like I don't even remember.
Was it 3D? No, it wasn't
No, it was not
3DS.
3ds Max. It was some other one. I don't remember it. It's on the tip of my
Was it
tongue.
Maya?
No, it wasn't a popular one. It was a very niche one. But just to make the point,
I'm trying to remember what it
this
was.
was an artist that basically was making insanely high quality results
Yeah.
and basically outperforming everyone. It's
Yeah.
not the right way to say it, but making something that everyone was like, "Oh my god," basically
Mhm.
at that point in time. So I think it was like during the 2010 to
Mhm.
2020, between there, maybe around 2015.
Mhm.
He had such a high amount of fidelity and rendering and quality and just sophistication, and he was using a very, very obscure 3D program that everyone thought was very strange because it wasn't the easiest or more intuitive, but he made it work and he liked the program himself. So
Mhm.
he found his own way. And that's something that us artists, we all have to figure out. We have to figure out what way we want to
Yeah.
take it. And for him, he used this one little program and basically made it look like it was some like it made it look like he was using the most crazy tools,
Yeah.
and people were just super surprised that he was just using this very niche.
Yeah.
And I will find the name and I'll link it below. But yeah, crazy stuff.
Was it Moy?
No, he was using Moy for the CAD,
Okay.
and then he was combining it with that other program.
Interesting.
Yeah, and at the time, not many people were using CAD, and so he kind of popularized. This is again like he popularized a new way of doing things. So he
Yeah.
popularized CAD modeling because he wanted to make his things look very credible, and CAD is how things are made in the real world. So he really pioneered that way of thinking.
Yeah.
Like, okay, well, I want to make it look like it was machined properly. I'm gonna
Hmm.
actually use the programs.
I don't know if it
Um,
was him, but like 'cause right now, every like characters, environment, hard surface kind of prop, everything uses 3D, but hard surface and sci-fi design really uses 3D. There are people that don't use it, but in general, Lau, the more I work, the more clients and studios from friends that I know that do hard surface, like you're almost expected to do a 3D workflow. They want the models, they want you to animate your designs, they want you to texture your stuff. Like it's becoming, if you look at hard surface gun vehicle mech people on ArtStation as well, like they're doing that. They're like texturing their stuff, they're
yeah.
animating their stuff. Like it's becoming the new standard for that. And I don't know if that started with Vitaly because he was doing that heavy 3D workflow.
Well, at the
Like,
time, not many people were getting those type of
yeah,
results. CAD was a bit fresh then. Like
yeah,
I remember at the time. Now artists are it's super popular. Like
yeah.
everyone's doing it. But at the time, the level of quality it was on a table. Like when people saw it, we couldn't figure out how the hell he was doing it. And so he made a big impact in that aspect.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, it's really cool.
Also, super cool. He was one of the artists that really made it not possible, but open the door to saying, can I only use 3D and be a concept artist? Like at the time, not many people were solely using only 3D. They had either mainly 2D only, like Photoshop, all that kind of stuff, photo bashing, or just pure drawing in Photoshop, or they would have a hybrid where they'd add 3D for like, a base and environment or like to draw over. But not many people were like comfortable being like, oh yeah, I just do everything in 3D. And so for me, hearing Vitaly's story, he was able to actually fully be capable of providing, all of concept artist roles, all the stuff like sketches, iterations, all through 3D programs. And it's crazy that he made that possible then. Because now, if you look up in our station, tons of people are making a living just doing 3D and being concept artists. It's pretty popular nowadays.
Yeah.
Especially for hard surface. I would say mainly for hard surface.
I mean, even with Andre that we had on talking about VR, like VR can sketch really fast. You can sketch in 3D. You can then finish your model like in VR. Like, I mean, the options are there if you want to do that. Yeah, it's really interesting.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, so let's maybe wrap it up with maybe I'll say one, maybe you say one. And then we can always maybe do another one. Maybe there's more, maybe we can do more fixated, more focused videos on maybe topics we want to cover. Maybe you guys can suggest hey, do you have a specific types of artists you'd like to know more about, etc. We'd love to hear. So
You go first, please.
Oh, okay. So we mentioned him, but I'd like to talk more about him because he's probably one of my biggest influences ever. So it would be Jaime Jones.
He's a big one.
For me, Jaime Jones is actually I'm gonna steal your water, Nick. Okay?
What?
I'm stealing your water. I finished mine.
Okay, fair. I was about to go drink that, but I guess I'm not. No, I don't want your germs. Yeah. Ew.
Okay. I lose a lot of saliva when I speak, so
I'm kidding.
I need some water. Anyways, yeah, Jaime Jones, definitely one of the most influential for me. But I think he's kind of like the type of artist that really has people excited to emulate and learn how he does his work. So I think I think he was influential at a point where we weren't very knowledgeable on all these, I would say, golden age illustrator or like rock solid illustration fundamentals. At the time, we sort of learned through videos. We had our processes. We learned obviously on YouTube, all that kind of stuff. There are popular ways to do things, but not a lot of people would tackle a digital painting like a master painter from the golden age. Like not a lot of people had the sensibilities of like a Dean Cornwell or an Edgar Payne or John Singer Sargent. I would say John Singer Sargent is probably the most influential. But Jaime was one of those people that really, really said, hey, like, look, guys, like you can do it like this. Like you can actually paint a sci-fi military base for like, let's say Destiny, like John Singer Sargent. And for us to see that for the first time it boggled my mind. Like I'm like, oh my God, like how did you make it look so juicy? And also, why does it look like a traditional painting? Like there was a level of traditional painting feeling, like an actual paint on canvas feeling that Jaime Jones was able to achieve. And I think that pulled, I would say, most of the industry towards that look. For me, like if you, and this is something that one of our friends said, like it's cool that like sometimes people have an influence by how many people try to emulate their work. And for me, Jaime was one of those artists that had a lot of people trying to emulate his work because it really just showed everyone how interesting you can make something look if you just go back in time and study those rock solid illustration fundamentals.
Yeah, I 100% agree. Honestly, it's and again, I even as somebody that was like a little bit older, like I couldn't go through concept art without like hearing that name Jaime Jones and have it be an influence, because a lot of artists who were interested in working that way were heavily influenced by him.
Yeah.
So yeah, no, that's I think a really good pick. I'm debating between two picks, but since the topic is influential artists, I hope I got the right person. But I want to talk a little bit about a game called Metal Gear Solid.
Oh, it's a good
And
one.
and the
Yeah.
artist Yoji Shinkawa worked on Metal Gear Solid. And the reason I want to bring spotlight, it's not necessarily something that influenced me per se, but it's something that's extremely influential in the industry, because a lot of times when you work on hard surface games, not all, but Metal Gear Solid tends to be a really big influence that gets thrown around on a lot of IPs when people are doing new sci-fi stuff. Like it had such an impact from a design sense, because the designs for Metal Gear Solid are really interesting. Like, even though it's very believable and realistic looking, they're really creative in the way things work. Um, and so a game like that, a property like that, and the artist who kind of designed them, Yoji, like it just it seeped into a lot of games, and it's a game that keeps getting referenced to this day. Like I still see it in reference boards. I still see it as inspiration, as things to look at, because it just, again, it did sci-fi so interestingly. Like it did its own thing. It stood
It's
out
iconic.
at a time where, like,
Yeah.
I think it was pretty a little after Halo, or no, before. I'm trying to think if they're around the same time, because Metal Gear Solid was PS1 and Halo was original Xbox. They're probably around the same time. I would have to look at the exact years, but like at a time where, like, a lot of people, you see Halo, this kind of sci-fi that, is very popular, this kind of heavy on the 45-degree angles, getting something that feels more grounded, more realistic in its design sense, like Metal Gear Solid, was really interesting. Yeah, so I think something that made an impact, but it made an impact, I wouldn't say as much externally like the artists we talked about,
Yeah.
but it definitely made an impact internally in the workforce, and it impacted art directors, because it seems to be something that
Yeah,
pops
it's
back
like
up a lot when we work on games.
yeah, it's like you created a whole different. Basically, you're creating a way, like a visual language.
Yeah.
Like you're literally creating a visual language, and I mean, I would say that's incredibly
Yeah.
influential. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
So it's something
100%.
like when you work, you're probably going to see it as part of reference board. Like, I don't think you could work at games over time without Metal Gear Solid being at one
Yeah,
point or another being referenced for one of the games you're working on, because
yeah.
it had such a
It's
huge
it's one
impact.
of those underrated ways to see it, because especially since it happened a long time ago, like it trickles down into the art
Yeah.
we make. And I like this quote, but like we're all standing on the shoulders of giants. No one's style is completely their own. We're always
Yeah.
building upon the art that's already been made.
Yeah.
But like when an artist becomes, or when this artist or the group of artists, oh, you dropped your phone.
I was pretending like I didn't drop it.
It's
You
okay. I
didn't have
called
to
you out.
say anything.
I called you out. We're gonna zoom in the camera. No, I'm
No,
good.
please don't.
But it's just cool, because like when, let's say, a group of artists, or this artist, I'm sure there's other artists in that project, make a unique, not a complete unique, because nothing's completely unique, but something that is fresh, like a fresh visual language, that is super impactful, because now everyone can see it, and we can all play with the visual language. You can play with it. And when it's on an art director's board, that art director is playing with it. They're seeing how they can bring it into their project
Yeah.
and adapt it and create something new again. So for me, that is extremely influential. It's super cool to
Yeah.
discuss.
Yeah. And I think one more thing I want to add, which, because I was jumping between two, I don't really want to talk about it, because
Sure.
we talked about that being another episode. So one thing that I think would be like a cool little sneak peek, because we did want to do that as an episode potentially, is that we talked a lot about influential artists, but artists are not the only thing that influence our industry. And things like certain shows or games or movements tend to also have huge impacts in the way we work in our industry. And the most recent one that I can think of very easily is Arcane. Arcane, after that came out, from an art perspective, so many artists worked on it, but like that's a huge example of what we might talk about in a future video, of how, like, not just artists can have an impact, like an actual just IP have such a
Oh
gigantic
yeah,
impact that people now want to work like that and want to do things like
it's
that,
like a
because
trend. It's like a mega trend,
yeah,
and like we all want to get on board, basically.
yeah,
Yeah,
and there's a few of those. I remember when, like, Love, Death and Robots came out. Like, there's so many of these throughout history,
yeah.
all the way up to
I
here.
remember
So,
Dishonored too. Like the art of
oh,
Dishonored
Dishonored,
was so
my
good.
God. And again, you can't just give it to
Yeah,
one artist. So many artists worked on that
yes.
are so good. So yeah, so I think that'd be a fun one to talk about, because I think it involves a lot of artists that helped make these trends
Yeah, maybe it could be
popular.
like visual, like
Yeah,
huge visual impacts, and like we can
yeah,
talk about like different, like it could be a movie, or yeah, that
yeah.
would be really, really fun.
So I think that's another way to kind of see it. But yeah, anyways, that was like the talk on artists, but maybe a little sneak peek to maybe another episode we'll do
Yeah,
later down the
exactly.
line. So
Also to mention, we just mentioned like just a couple of artists on our mind, but there's for sure a bunch of other influential artists.
oh yeah, oh yeah.
So if we skipped your favorite one, we probably know of that person, but we just didn't have the time to talk about them. But yeah, if you want, maybe we'll do another episode, or if you have, let's say, a
Yeah, we
very
can definitely do a part 2 for
yeah, we can do a
sure.
part 2, or if there's an influential concept artist you think everyone else should know, please like comment below. Tell us
Yeah.
your most influential concept artist. We'd love to hear it.
Yep. 100%.
All right, signing off.
Bye.
Bye bye.